Hey girl, hey.
Am I? Hey, girl.
How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing good. Okay, hair.
Yes, I'm loving your slick bun. It's giving very much woman on a mission, okay?
Thank you. That was the look that I was going for. But you were able to join. Thank you so much for
Yes.
being.
Yes, girl. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We can go ahead and get started, and then as people filter in, given the type of conversation that we're going to have today, I really feel like people will be able to just grasp on wherever we are in the conversation.
Right.
For the two that we have here, just know that this is a open conversation. So please feel free to give your opinions and chime off in the comment section. And once we reach a break in the conversation, we can definitely get to them. But I like to start off by saying, of course, hello and welcome to another Cognitively Kendra live stream. Before I introduce our topic, I always like to put this out in the universe. I am manifesting that one day our show will reach the masses and one day we'll be picked up by a major platform and we'll be famous.
All of
That I have put that out there in the universe. My name is Kendra, and I am your host. And I have the amazing Sharonda Stiggers here with us. Sharonda is an author. Sharonda is a licensed master social worker and also my sister girl.
Thank you for that introduction. You're the
Oh,
amazing one. We love Cognitively Kindred, like I always say. We love also a licensed master social worker, therapist, and all of that, honey.
thank you, girl. So today we're going to be talking about recognizing how mental health issues show up in religious practices. Before we deep dive into this topic, I want us to share with our audience a little bit about our own religious views. Just so you guys can get to know us and see the perspectives that we are coming from. So, Sharonda, I'll allow you to go first.
Yes, thank you, Kendra. So I am a Christian. Okay, I do believe. What about you?
And me, I identify as spiritual. I don't associate directly with any religion. However, just the way that my brain is set up, I feel like we can find truth in whatever practice. It doesn't matter how somebody identifies, unless you're on the side of the dark side of the spectrum that kind of feels like a negative entity. I probably won't find much truth in that. But yeah, I identify as spiritual.
Awesome. I love that we have these different perspectives too. I think that makes
All
the
right.
conversation even.
Yes, and I also feel like that this can also help people realize how things can coexist. One doesn't have to necessarily, overshadow the other. If that's your belief, that's fine, but they can coexist. Like two different people can be in the same room.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now that you guys know a little bit about us, I also want to put a disclaimer out there that this conversation is not meant to bash or demean anyone regardless of their culture or religious practice. This is just a conversation about some of the things that we've noticed as mental health therapists when it comes to how religion and mental health seem to kind of teeter on the same seesaw sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yay. So now for some time, religion coinciding with mental health has raised a lot of question marks. Um, some believe that religion and mental health can cohabitate, while others feel like they should remain separate or remain apart from each other. Even in my own research, I have noticed how some scientists and therapists have conducted studies on whether belief as a whole can be considered a mental illness, and I just thought that was strange and very kind of like making things one-sided. But these are the things that people tend to research, and it just goes to show like how everybody has their different viewpoints on how certain things are. So Sharonda, the first question that I have for you, given your experience as a human being on this earth for one, and then you being a mental health advocate, have you ever firsthand witnessed any type of uh, religious practice that you felt have went way too far?
Not directly, however, in practice, my clients, I've had a few who have experienced trauma in their church homes. And we've had, I'm sure you have too, Kendra. We've had to unpack a lot of things as it relates to spaces that were supposed to feel safe for them. And that
Right.
was, yeah, that was not the case. And so we were able to get through it, but it was as heavy as, think of any of the heaviest traumas. It was
Mhm.
as equally as so, if not more.
Yeah. Yeah. Me, myself, I haven't, like you said, I haven't witnessed anything directly in person. I have a lot of opinions about like things that went on in church as a kid, that I remember visually just kind of being like, this don't sound right, or this don't sit right with me. But nothing too extreme. However, I do a lot of like research and reading about cult leaders and some of their extreme practices. And one of the most extreme things that I ever saw, and well, not witnessed, but read about, was people actually like sacrificing themselves. The prophet of this cult, he's in jail now. He probably didn't die because this didn't been a long time ago. But this prophet was apparently receiving messages from their God, and this God was telling him, so to speak, that he needs to tell certain people when it's time for them to cross over for the spiritual war. So these people were literally planning their own suicides and dying so they can cross over and fight a spiritual battle. This cult leader in particular, he had probably about 500 people following him, and he had managed to have about 75 people go through with actual suicide. That was the most extreme. Well, I'm not going to even say it was the most extreme, but I just couldn't believe that something like that was actually happening, and it was here on American soil, this type of cult taking place. So that's been my most extreme thing that I've ever saw.
Yeah, I mean, and people, some of the people that are listening might think, is this real? But y'all, this is a real thing. Like,
Mm.
I know I've done some research as well, and there was, I don't want to say any names. You can do your own research, but there was a cult leader who actually led his congregation to be killed with a drink, and it was mixed with something, and it actually did kill his congregation. So he, I'm very sure, was suffering with some mental health issues of his own.
Right. Right. And that's why I feel like this topic and this conversation is so important, because thinking about the scenario that I know of, that's 500 people could have died because of word of mouth, like something that they heard someone else say and that they trust this person to deliver a message for them. And the whole time they're kind of leading them astray. And also, given the cult leaders, while it's hard for me to empathize because of some of the things that they've done to people, but also the therapist in me is kind of like, this person was sick the whole time and they thought maybe that they were doing a good thing. Like, I just can't believe it's such a hard situation to come to terms with.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that you said trust too. That's a key word in this. That's just a theme that kept, as I was preparing for this live, that kept coming up in my head. Like, these people were vulnerable, and they
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so, and then you might think that these things have happened years and years and years ago, but no, y'all, like, these things have happened in present times.
And they're still happening as we speak. And we're going to dive into how it looks for different cultures, because I know a lot of us as Black people, African American people, we go back and forth with the battle of us not wanting to claim mental illness, but some of it is going on in our churches too. And it's very important that we start paying attention and recognizing, and also helping people recognize red flags when it comes to this type of situation. Going back to something that you said a little bit earlier, Sharonda, I think I had my first experience where clients have talked about where church has really dampened their mental health. And it's a hard thing to do when you're a therapist, because you don't want to step on nobody's toes when it comes to their religious practice. So it's hard to say, like, hey, I know I'm your therapist, but you might be being manipulated and kind of just drug along for somebody else's ego. Versus, it's hard. I don't know. I think what I'm trying to say is, just as a therapist, it's hard to, that's a hard line to cross.
I know exactly what you're talking about, Kendra. It's not an easy thing to do, to, while you gain trust with your client, then break to them something that is a part of their core value at this
Right.
point. And so little old me is going to have to break it to you that these are some signs of abuse, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I like how you said that, because that's literally in some of the cases that I've seen as a practitioner, that's literally what it is, abuse. And when they come to terms, I'm always kind of like on edge, like, please don't turn on me, because I'm I promise I'm not trying to hurt you. Then all of a sudden, they tell whoever the leader is, and then I'm the person that's being called the devil and everything else. And I'm like, that's not
No,
what I mean.
no, absolutely quite the opposite. Okay.
Right, right. So we can go ahead and start diving into the meat of this topic. The question that we want to pose is, how do we know when it's too much? Going back to what we said about research studies, I feel like when certain things happen, that's when you just, it's so hard to say, but when certain things happen, we got to start being able to recognize, like, okay, does my true self, or is my spiritual self resonating with what is being told to me? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I don't, okay, how am I trying to put this?
Right. So it's kind of, I know exactly what you're saying. It's kind of like you have your two voices. You've got that inner voice going on, and then you've got your what's being told to you or fed to you from a spiritual perspective, and then you're kind of trying to fish out what is real, what is true to me, and what I should be following.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so it's kind of hard, especially if you've grown up in a lot of these practices, to find that voice. And a lot of people don't.
Yeah. And I really like how you put that, because that's something that I noticed too. I have no problem working with any type of client. But I do notice that when people come to therapy about their religious trauma, they bring a lot of that in with them. So when you are that voice trying to tell them something different, um, it tends to be a battle. And what I notice also is that there's that person in the middle that does not know who to listen to. And as a therapist, my favorite line in that moment has been, so something brought you here.
That's
Something
good.
brought you to therapy. So I'm not saying leave your religious views at the door, but something about your spirit started questioning what you were being told, so you came here. Um, and when I say that, I think that's kind of, I feel like I've witnessed clients kind of say, oh, so I do have a voice. Like, I don't have to follow, like this direction all the time, and it does not make me a bad person. Because what I notice is that when they do come to therapy, most of the time they feel bad about doing it because they feel like they're kind of turning their back on their religious leader. And
Mm-hmm.
that into the next point of one of the biggest red flags I feel like people need to know when it comes to religious practices kind of being influenced by mental health issues is that when it turns into a desire to be admired, um, when your religious leader is seeking more admiration and fame, and when it turns into you needing to be convinced all the time, I think that's when it starts kind of turning into maybe a mental illness, because it's not about God at this point. It's
Mm,
starting to this you need to listen to me because I'm this. I'm the big person that God gives me these messages. I'm the one, like when it starts turning into team I is
yes.
when you start saying, okay, I don't, this might not be,
Yeah.
like the thing. Yeah, go ahead, Sharonda.
No, I was just being your hype man and saying yes thing you were saying. Someone has a comment here. Shine. Oh, I feel like family can be an issue.
And letting the world get in your head. Some people be afraid to be judged. Yeah, I agree with that completely,
Yeah.
Sean. Like, even for me, my family, my mom's side of the family is from Mississippi. They don't play no type of spiritual games. Like me, as I remember when I first started just kind of like breaking away from religion. At first, I was angry. Just in my own experience, I was angry because of just how I felt like I was done. But for a long time, I didn't tell my family. To be totally honest, I still don't know if my mama know. Like,
Yeah.
but that's just I agree with that comment.
Well, it's kind of like
Yeah.
uh, yes. I mean, I think you when I was listening to you talk, I had a lot of points. One thing that stood out to me as a therapist is personality disorders and other type of situations that could take place. And then on the other hand, we have people who, right, there's different cultures, right? So there are cultural factors that come into play. And so that is there's a whole lot of when you're influenced by some of these personality disorders or whatever mental illness is coming from that um, religion, it's hard to break from. And then when you add the
Mm,
cultural factors to it, it's really hard to break away. And if you
right.
do right, and if you do some research on some of these places or establishments, there might be a door that will lock behind you physically,
Hmm.
right? So it's not just about a mental thing that you have to overcome. There's some other factors too. So there's some red flags that you need to look for. Like you said earlier, Kendra, your client said, "Oh, I have a voice." If you've lost your,
Mm-hmm.
that's a red flag that you might need to leave, right? Or if, for example, the
Mm-hmm.
behind you. So there's a lot of red flags that come with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Um and also just like going back to the losing your voice part, sometimes I feel like when you don't have a person, it's a red flag when someone does not have a personality outside of their religion. A lot of people might not like that because some people truly feel like they can be immersed in God and love God so much that that's all that they speak about, and I'm fine with that. But I feel like it's very important for you to acknowledge your spiritual being. I feel like every time you get on the internet, or if you're taking a picture, if it's always just, whatever the spiritual practice is that you practice, that I feel like that could be a sign that somebody is hurting.
Mm,
Because if no identification outside of that, do you really know who you are? You know,
mm,
like how and it's okay. Like, I'm not at all bashing anyone for loving their God and, being immersed in their practice, but it's so important for you to still get to know you and what your likes are and what your wants are while you're having a earthly experience as a human being. It's important for you to have that. If you I feel like when my question is, like, when a person is so immersed in certain things and they have to prove it to everybody that, okay, I love God, I'm this, I'm a saint, I'm walking by faith all the time, 24/7, 365. What are you really covering up? And have you gotten to the core of whatever that could potentially
mhm,
be? You know what I
mm.
mean?
I love it. You're saying the things that no, a lot of people are just not going to say, and this is
Hmm.
important conversation. Um,
Hmm.
this is when we get into, from the Christian perspective, from what I believe is when you could potentially be holding idol to someone, something, or an entity as a whole, and that actually goes against what I believe what it we're supposed to do. Um,
Right.
Worshiping two masters. Um, so it's just kind of like you. So what do you do in a situation that where what you are practicing goes to the extreme?
Hmm.
What should we tell our clients or someone who might be watching? What's the next step for them, when that happens, because they might not know that they're already too far gone.
Yes. I love how you asked that question. And my advice has been, um, to go back to your inner self and go back to how you even got to this point in the first place. When you were seeking God, you were seeking, I'm assuming, a spiritual connection. You wanted to be connected to the higher power. And when it gets like this, I feel like it's time for people to start drawing back and doing your own research about what your practices are. Because when somebody's feeding you information, they're feeding you what they want you to know. So go out and seek your own counsel, and figure out if the message that is being put out there is that the message that I need to receive. Because I to this day I will still listen to church sermons, and I can receive information from those sermons. However, out of the 100 people that could have been on the video or on the live, that message could have probably only been for 4 people. So seek your own counsel outside of what you're getting. That's my advice. Like, if something starts to feel scary, or if it starts to feel overwhelming, my advice is always to just kind of like, okay, draw back and figure out where this is coming from and why am I feeling this way. Maybe that message is not for me.
Mm. That's good. I love that. I love that you said to seek counsel too. And um, there's a few different ways they could go about that. They can find a faith-based therapist if they want to go in that route. They don't, or they could find someone who does not identify as a faith-based therapist and maybe get more of a unbiased opinion or a more broadened approach. I'm not sure, whatever way you want to go about that. Or a few different ways. You can ask a mentor,
Yeah.
someone that you trust, about what you're feeling. And then it's all about too, what is, because Kendra, when you mentioned that you're able to decipher what's for you, what I'm hearing is that you have a strong connection with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that person would also need to um, figure out what their inner voice sounds like and get to that place too.
Yes, I love that so much. Figuring out what your own inner voice sounds like, because that can very much become drowned out when you
Yeah.
are heavily immersed into religion. And my something that I've even said in therapy with clients who have had this experience is, what makes you feel like you're not special enough for God to speak to you too? You
Mm.
Regardless of whatever your spiritual, your domination, whatever it is that you do, what makes you think that you are not special enough for God to speak to you directly? You don't have to receive everything from somebody. And I think that has helped
Yeah.
people realize, okay, I do have an inner voice. Okay, and I can do this on my own. Um, Going to
Mhm.
church is just help for me. It's the icing on the cake, but I can connect with God in a way that is comfortable for me too.
Right, right, right. So, and then just hearing you say that, it shows me that where someone could be mentally is that they've kind of placed again an idol upon the church that they're at. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the opposite of from what I believe, what God wants us to do is
Right.
to serve. We don't serve two masters. That's just not how it goes. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and there's you're kind of doing yourself a disservice when you're operating from that space.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. So I know a lot of y'all are familiar with Michael Todd and the Crazy Faith Ministry. So I wanted to like dive into his ministry a little bit. Again, I know people love this man, and I don't want anybody to be offended. But Sharonda, are you familiar with like the situation that happened with him and his brother?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay. So I want us to like look into this and just kind of like break it down a little bit. I initially had the YouTube. Well, I don't. We're not gonna watch the actual scene, but I
Okay.
want to talk about Michael Todd's apology to his brother. Um, I feel like people make mistakes. There was a mistake, but the apology is what kind of made me question like what is really going on here. Um, I can't even pull it up no more because my Wi-Fi here is crazy. But basically, in the video, I really hope y'all can get on YouTube and watch it. His apology was just kind of like, he mentioned how the story in the Bible where he talked about how Jesus like spat on somebody's eyes and then the person wasn't blind anymore. And he just kind of like laughed it off like spitting is not the lowest form of, well, it's not the highest form of disrespect that you can do to somebody, let alone your brother.
Mhm.
Um, so that video just really made me feel some type of way. The apology was very insincere to me, just considering who he is in ministry.
Mhm.
and the large following that he has. Like, he was kind of kikiing every now and then in the video, and I was just kind of like, that was your brother, for one. That was, I believe that was his blood brother.
Mhm.
And I feel like when you offer an apology, especially a public one, it
Yeah.
ain't nothing about. Like, your church ministry saw you do that. Um, and another thing that stood out to me was how he mentioned the word extreme. He was like, I try to go to really great lengths to show how God moves, and I try to go to extremes to prove a point. And I was just kind of like, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, when it starts turning into somebody trying to sell you something, then that's a red flag, because we hear, because we already know, how powerful the belief of God is. Why are you trying to
Yeah.
perform?
Yeah.
Like, we already know that. So I just want to get your thoughts about him in that situation. I don't know. What do you think?
Yes. Okay. So we can link the video if we need to later, but exactly what Kendra said. He did. I know his personality is bubbly. So,
Mhm,
like, naturally, from a mental health perspective, we know that that could be a defense mechanism if he's laughing too, right?
mhm,
So, a lot of things that can go into that. It makes me sad that even you feel that it was insincere, because that tells me that you're not the only one, that a lot of people that way.
mhm.
And so I would hope that it was sincere, but I do agree with you that it you know it, it should have taken it a little bit more seriously.
Mhm.
Again, we don't know. It could have been a defense mechanism for the laughter. We don't know. I hope it was sincere, but I see what you saw. um, and my other thought is, with him being in social media, that's exactly what, with him using the word extreme, he was being honest. That's exactly what he wanted to do, was get those views in. But
Yeah,
right, but with that, what's the place that we're coming from? Are we getting views, or are we saving people and spreading the word? Right? So it's just like, there's a lot that comes into play with that. He's
yeah,
I wonder if being a public figure in social media kind of overshadowed that moment and made
yeah,
him do something for the gram. I don't know.
hmm,
What do you think?
yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because it goes back to what you said. The core value is to not idolize two masters in Christianity. And with his, I hate to say it, y'all, please don't nail me to the cross about this, but I really just, when he first started out, my spirit was just kind of like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he does so much, and people do the most, and that's fine. That is completely fine. But I really just feel like he was trying to sell. I want to listen to what you got to say. I feel like the things that you're saying is very important, but when it turns into a sales pitch,
Mm-hmm.
it does not feel right to me, because we already here because we believe in God, like,
Yeah.
we here already. Like, I
Yeah.
don't need to be sold anything. And I think I ran across a couple of sermons where he was just mentioning about how he obtained like certain material items. And I'm just kind of like, I'm a material girl.
Material girl, okay?
But that and my faith are
Yeah.
two, different things. Who I am spiritually, I can't take those things with me, and I don't care about them in that aspect of my life. So when that starts to kind of come into church, I'm just kind of like,
Hmm.
I don't know if I really like that. But Yeah, his that's just my opinion on him. Sometimes I feel like he just does a whole lot
Yeah.
that have to really be necessary for
I,
me.
I trust your what you felt, right? So if you felt something that your discernment was telling you that something wasn't right about that, you know,
Hmm.
I trust what you felt, and I felt something was off by the spitting too. Um, I was just like, okay, this is
Yeah.
what are we doing? I actually didn't know that that's what the I know of the story, right, that he was trying to tell, but I learned much later that that's what he was trying to teach. It was all about the spitting. So
Yeah.
at first, that was first, right? The story was second.
Hmm. Yeah.
For all for
That.
group. You, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, girl. So I was just saying, all for viewer attention.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had a comment. Sean said, I think people go in with good intentions, but once power and I guess popularity comes in, I think that's when they start to really get off path. They lose purpose. I absolutely agree with that. And I'm not saying that anybody who is faith based can't get sidetracked. Um, I agree. Like people can really go in with good intentions, and then once you start getting more fame, you kind of lose focus. However, that apology video is what kind of sent me with him. Like it just did not feel um sincere. And I think he knew, like he knew that he was kind of doing it for the views and
Yeah,
everything. He just it was just a hard thing to come back from. But that leads us into us just kind of really talking about red flags and leaving you guys with tips and advice to take with you when you're thinking about joining a new religion, or if you ever felt questioned or disturbed by your religious practice.
hmm.
So do you want to start with your tips first, Sharonda?
Whatever you want to do, sis. We can do it that way if you want to do it that way.
Okay.
Okay.
So one of the tips that I have is always kind of going with what your intuition says.
Mhm.
So, whatever your spirit is feeling, the same way that your religious leader is connected to God, you're connected to. So, if something doesn't feel right, acknowledge that.
Good.
Um, I feel like we're all gifted in knowing when things feel wrong or right to a certain degree. So, it's super important for us to not lose touch with that. Like, don't lose touch with your inner being.
I love
And then I have in therapy, oh no. My second piece of advice is also use multiple resources. So if you're heavily guided by your religion, read and interpret the scripture for yourself. Read the Bible yourself. Maybe even after a sermon, sit down and just read it and go over it in your own mind. Sometimes reading in your head helps you start to make connections versus listening to something being said to you. So sit down and read it for yourself. To try to gain a better understanding. And then lastly, I will also say seek counseling, whether it's from a therapist or like-minded individuals. You never know, the person that you're sitting next to in church may have interpreted the sermon a little bit different, and you might need to just get the message from the person that's next to you. So seek counsel whenever you feel like something don't feel right.
I
Those are
love
my tips.
yes, I am co-signing all of that. Okay. I love all those tips. I'm just gonna come behind you and mention some red flags and tips. If you feel that you always, the key word is always, need to consult with a leader in the church or your pastor, then that could potentially be a red flag, right? And too much of anything is not good. We all know that. So
Yeah.
right. So if you feel like you always need to go and ask a leader in the church or your pastor about something, and or permission to do something, um,
Mm,
anything like that all the time, that's a red flag. Versus,
mm-hmm.
right, versus listening to or having that relationship with God or whoever, whatever you believe in yourself, and reading what the word says. The
Yes.
Yes, the key word is always. I'm not saying you can't consult with your pastor. That's not what I'm saying. You got to do it all the time. Um,
Yeah.
right, or ask for permission to do something. If you are in a situation where something is going against your basic human rights, that is a big red flag.
Yes.
Absolutely. Sexual, your body belongs to you. Okay. It
Mm-hmm.
belongs to anyone else but you. So I'll keep it G rated, but just know your body belongs to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see, if you're finding that there's division being created within your family, that's a red flag, and that's just something that not only I've noticed in my research but in my therapy room. When
Mm.
I've had clients come to me from church trauma, there was division created, and I've seen that as a trend and a pattern that I've seen personally. I'm sure you've seen it too, Kendra.
Yes.
And then another, if you feel discomfort in your body, and if, I think I mentioned it earlier, but if the door locks behind you, it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to
Yeah.
get home. Okay. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not laughing because it's not funny. It's just, that's just my personality, y'all.
Yeah.
It's a serious thing, so I don't mean to
Yeah.
laugh. um I think that's everything. Yeah, just watch for that, have good boundaries, and
Mm-hmm.
counsel.
Very vulnerable, and that's kind of like the same situation with domestic violence victims. They usually pick people who are vulnerable and have a hard time thinking for themselves or having boundaries with certain things. So it's just crazy how religious abuse and domestic violence kind of go hand in hand. If we were to line those lists up, a lot of the same things are on those lists. So if you're familiar with domestic violence and just kind of like how it looks, if you start to notice that in a religious practice, then it may be time for you to go ahead.
I love, yes, and research shows too. I love that you came to that finding. Research shows. Let's see. Are you still there, Kendra? Okay. Okay, just making sure. Oh, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't know which one of us is going slow or lagging, but I'll just stop here and just say that I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us. Please be sure to like both of our pages, Cognitively Kendra and Sharonda Stiggers. Also purchase Sharonda's book, The Mental Makeover. Very, very good read that helps you spiritually connect with yourself. And if you are faith based, you know, that is even more icing on the cake. So definitely do that. We have enjoyed y'all so much and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.